This is the introductory video for the Inelastic Collisions experiment for Physics 1101-1120. There's two parts to this experiment. The first part is done on the air track, which you have seen before, and the second part is done on the rotational apparatus, which you have also seen before. Now we are studying an inelastic collision. That's a sticky collision where the two objects stick together. So one of our objects is going to be this red glider, and the other one is this gold glider, and they're going to collide together, and they're equipped with Velcro, so they actually stick together. So we're going to be sending the red glider down the track. It'll pass through a photo gate, collide with the second glider, and then pass through a second photo gate. But there's a few things you're going to want to do before you start taking data. So the first thing you're going to want to do is level your air track. So you take your spirit level and place it on the edge here, and then get the bubble as centered between the lines as you can. So you adjust the lab jack down here at this end of the track if you need to. So you get that as level as you can in the area where you're going to be taking data, so between the photo gates. But then you want to double check it. So this experiment is a little bit sensitive to any tilt in the track. So here's how you check it. It'll get a little noisy, but I'm going to turn on the air track. I'm going to start this glider from rest, and I'm just going to see that it doesn't head to one end of the track preferentially. So you always need to start it from rest, and what you should find is it either stays still when you let go of it, or maybe oscillates back and forth a little, but it doesn't head preferentially to one end of the track. So let me now demonstrate. I'll turn on the air track. I set the glider on the track and very carefully just adjust it so I release it from rest, and what I should find is that it doesn't really go anywhere. It may oscillate back and forth a little bit by say up to 20 centimeters, but it should just basically stay put after I release it if the track is level. The next thing you want to do is make sure that the photo gates are at the right level. So what I mean by that is we have this picket object on top of the red glider, and we want to make sure that the photo gate's going to be triggered by every single black line on here. So typical errors would be either that the photo gate's too high, it's not being triggered at all by the picket fence, or that it's a little bit too low and it's only being triggered 3 times for the longer stripes. So you want to run it very carefully through the photo gate and make sure that this red light on the top is coming on every single time one of those little black stripes goes through. Same thing for the other photo gate. Also be careful that you haven't got this just slightly tilted such that maybe the first 7 or 8 trigger the photo gate, but the last 2 maybe don't. So just check that every single black line is triggering both photo gates. The way in which the experiment's going to be done is that we are going to be colliding the red glider into a stationary gold glider. You do need the masses of both of these, so go ahead and weigh them. Weigh the red one with the picket fence in place. And you want to adjust the position of your photo gates as follows. What we want is for the red glider to come along, to pass completely through photo gate 1 before the collision happens, and then very soon after that hit the gold glider, and then pass through the second photo gate. And you'll get the best results if you actually have things set up such that the picket fence is right between the photo gates, but fairly snugly contained between them. So it completely passes through the first photo gate, then the collision happens with the gold glider, and then they travel off together through the second photo gate. So that actually means that the picket fence is going to be in between the photo gates like this, and the gold glider usually has to be sitting outside of the photo gates for that to occur. So once you've got that all set up, then you're ready to take data, and you're going to be using a program called momentumimpulse.exe to take measurements on the velocity before and after the collision. So I'm going to show you on screen how to use the program, but first I'm going to do a trial run with this just so you can see it. So as I mentioned, we want the picket fence to be between the photo gates when the collision takes place. That means I want my gold glider actually outside the photo gates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the air track. I'm going to hold the gold glider in place until just before the collision to make sure that it's stationary. I'll give this guy a flick, send it down the track, and the collision will take place. You would obviously want the program running when this happens, so you would turn on the air track, have your partner start the program, hold the gold glider in place, give the red one a flick, let go, and let the collision take place. And you should strive to have a fairly gentle collision, so not too noisy, just because if the gliders bounce around a bit too much, you'll get extra friction on the track.
So now I'll show you the program that you use in this part of the experiment. So as usual, go to the PhotoGate VIs, and we want to open up momentum impulse. So there may be two of them, and if you see two, use the momentum impulse SF1. So that looks like this, and there's a few things you're going to need to change in the program over here on the left-hand side. The intervals to time is set to 10, and that should be fine. There are 11 black stripes on your picket fence, so that means there's 10 intervals between the stripes. So 10 intervals is actually correct. The edge-to-edge distance is incorrect, however. So this is measured from the leading edge of one black stripe on the picket fence to the leading edge of the next black stripe. So let me demonstrate.
So you've got a picket fence with a bunch of black stripes on it. The edge-to-edge distance that you need to measure is between the first edge of one black stripe to the first edge of the next black stripe. So that's roughly a centimeter, but you should measure it and think about what your uncertainty is.
So again, the edge-to-edge distance gets entered here, and it should be converted into meters. So right now this says 0.1 meters, 10 centimeters. That's way too big. And then you also need to enter the masses of your two gliders. To start the program, all you need to do is click this white arrow in the corner, and you wait for the little red button to turn green, and then you can start your experiment. So I'm going to do that now, but I'm going to spare you the noise. So now I'm back, and I've got some data that I've taken. So first of all, notice that the little white arrow in the corner is gone. So it's actually saying that the program is still running. If I didn't like my data and I wanted to do a second run, what I'd do is I'd click this cancel button, then the white arrow would come back, and then I could click that and do another data session. However, I like my data, and you don't want to click this cancel button unless you've analyzed both your graphs. So I'm just going to leave this guy running, and I recommend you do that too, unless you want to take new data. So on the screen, you'll notice that there's a red line and a gold line. Those are for the red and the gold gliders. And this is a velocity time graph. So before the collision, the gold glider's velocity was assumed to be 0. That's why it's flatlined down here. And your first photo gate measured the velocity of the red glider as it was sliding along. This is before the collision. After the collision, your second photo gate measured the velocity of the red glider, which was also the velocity of the gold glider because they're stuck together. So we need to get the velocity before and after the collision for the red glider, and before and after the collision for the gold glider. Although that's simple, because before the collision it was 0, and after the collision it's the same as for the red glider. So how do we get the velocities off of this? Well, we're going to use some cursors that are built into this program. They're a little hard to see, however, so here's how you find them. You go down here to this white box, and you right-click on, say, the first one for red initial, and you say Bring to Center. And then it may be a little hard to see here, but there's a cursor on the screen that I can grab and drag around. So I'm going to drag it up here to mark what the velocity before the collision of the red glider was. And so you can read that value off down here. There's two numbers beside red initial, and they're the x and the y coordinates of the cursor. And we actually want this second one. This is the y coordinate, that's the velocity of the red glider before the collision. We're also going to want the velocity of the red glider after the collision, so I'll do the same thing for the second cursor. I'll right-click on it, say Bring to Center, and then there's a cursor here that I can grab and drag around. So I'll put it here to mark the location of the velocity of the red glider after the collision. And you could do it for the gold glider as well, but I don't recommend it because it's actually the same as for the red glider. So again, the second column here gives you the velocity of the red glider before the collision and the velocity of the red glider and the gold glider after the collision, once you've set your cursors correctly. And you're going to want those numbers for your calculations. So once you've got your graph set up like this with the cursors in the right locations, you're going to print out this graph, and then by hand, you'll write down what the velocities are, and you'll want to write down what their uncertainties are. That's something you need to calculate, the uncertainties. So let me outline how you do that now.
The program calculates the velocity based on d divided by t, where d is the edge-to-edge distance on the picket fence, and t is the time for one interval. Now we don't actually have these t values, so how do you get the uncertainty on v if you don't know what t was? Well, you actually can do it. This down here would be the uncertainty formula that you would use to calculate the velocity's uncertainty. But you'll notice that this dt, the uncertainty on t, is just the uncertainty of a photo gate. So coming down here, the uncertainty of the photo gate's 1%, so that's 0.01 times t, and then it's all divided by t, so the t's cancel out and you would just have 0.01 in the brackets here. So even though we don't know what t is, we only know what d is, we still can find an uncertainty on the velocity that the program gave us.
So now that we're done with our velocity time graph, we also want to look at our momentum time graph. So to see the momentum time graph, you're going to click on this button down here to switch between those two graphs. Now, I want to warn you about something glitchy about this program. You see this little double-headed arrow in the middle of the button? If you click on that, absolutely nothing happens. If you click anywhere else on this button, then it behaves normally, and you can switch between the two graphs. So just avoid that little double-headed arrow. So now we're looking at our momentum time graph. And we want to get values off of this the same way we did before. Now, theoretically, we expect the impulse of the two gliders to be equal and opposite. So an impulse is just a change of momentum, and this is a momentum time graph. So what we expect to see here is that the drop in the red glider's momentum should equal the rise in the gold glider's momentum. It doesn't quite look this way on this graph because I didn't actually put in the correct masses before I started. But that's what you should find, is that the drop in red should equal the rise in gold. So again, we're going to get our numbers off of this, and we're going to use the cursors for this. So I'm going to click down here in the white box on red initial, and I'm going to say bring to center, and then I can grab my cursor and bring it up here to mark the momentum of the red glider before the collision. And I'll do the same for after the collision, so red final, right click on that, bring to center, grab this guy, and move it to mark the location of the momentum of the red glider after the collision. And in this case, I do need to use the third one. So right-click on it, bring to center, grab that cursor, and move it here to mark the location of the momentum of the gold glider after the collision. And we're going to assume that the momentum of the gold glider before the collision was 0. So again, you're going to want to print off this graph, and then write by hand the value of all the momentums, and put uncertainties on that. And there are some questions in the lab manual that you want to make sure you answer. Basically, they have to do with checking whether or not momentum was conserved during this collision, and whether the impulses were equal and opposite as expected. So before I tell you about the next part of the experiment, I first want to warn you about something to look out for in your own data. So this is new data, and you'll notice that this line over here is kind of sloped looking. It is over here as well, but that's a bit harder to see. So if your data looks sloped on the sections that are supposed to be horizontal, that means your track was not leveled well enough. So if you see this, whether it's sloping upward or downward, re-level your track a little more carefully and then retake your data.
So here's the apparatus that you're going to be using in the second part of the experiment. And there's a few things you need to do to prepare it for use as well. So first of all, as usual, you want to level the apparatus. So you put the spirit level on the base, look straight down, and make sure that the bubble is centered in the circle. If it's not, the bottoms of these legs are little screws that you can adjust to adjust the leveling of the entire apparatus. So level it as carefully as you can. Next, in order to use the computer program, we need a photogate on here. So you need to remove photogate 1 from your air track and attach it to the apparatus like so, such that the picket disc is going to trigger the photogate. Now, in a previous experiment, you actually measured the moment of inertia of this apparatus and also another object, either a rectangular block that was oriented in different ways or a set of 3 different objects. You're going to be using those moment of inertia values you got from the previous experiment in this experiment too. So as you know, linear momentum is supposed to be conserved in a collision. Mass times velocity should be conserved before and after the collision. Same thing goes with rotational motion, except that it's angular momentum that is conserved. And that is equal to, instead of mass times velocity, moment of inertia times angular velocity. So you need the moment of inertia of this apparatus and of the accessory object you're going to use, and you already have those from a previous experiment. The program is going to give you the angular velocity. We're using a slightly different program for this part of the experiment. It's called angular momentum, but it looks a lot like the program you just saw. So I will show you how to use that program in just a moment on screen, but for now I'm going to show you how to use this apparatus. So the way in which you perform this part of the experiment is you're going to give the disc a spin, you'll reach over and start your program, and then very quickly after that point you want to drop the object onto the spindle. So you want to capture that collision on screen. So we had an object that was spinning and another object that was not spinning. They collided and then they continued to spin together. It's very much like what you did in part A, where you had a glider in motion and one glider stationary. They collided and then they continued moving together. Except this time, it's spinning motion rather than linear motion. If you used the rectangular block previously, then obviously you're going to be using that. And if you use the 3 accessory objects, you'll be using either the rectangular block or the disc.
So now I'll show you the second program that we use. So again, go to PhotoGate VIs, and before we use the momentum impulse program, this time you want to use the angular momentum program. And it looks pretty similar to what you saw before. And again, over on the left-hand side, there's some things you need to check. So intervals to time is set to 25 by default. That's actually fine. You can make it larger if you wanted to, and that just sets how long you've got to take data before the program stops running. So 25 is fine. The other thing to check is this edge-to-edge angle in radians. So, just as a reminder,
your picket disc has 10 of these black and white stripes, so 360 degrees divided by 10 gives you 36 degrees. The angle from the leading edge of one black stripe to the leading edge of the next black stripe would be 36 degrees converted into radians. So you go back into the program
and check this number. Just make sure it's correct. Again, to take data, all you're going to need to do is to click the white arrow. If you don't see the white arrow, like on mine right now, you can click this little stop button. That'll bring your white arrow back. So you would click the white arrow, wait for this little red button to turn green, and if you want to retake any data later, you can click the cancel button, which will bring back the white arrow, and then you can do another run. So now I'll take some data and show you what this looks like. Okay, here I am with some data, and as before, I'm just going to leave the program running. So if I wanted to retake some data, I'd either click the cancel button or this little stop icon. That would give me my white arrow back, and then I could click that and take more data. But this data is okay. So what we have here is we've got a level area, and then a sudden drop-off, and then another level area. So what is this? Well, the first level area is just the bare apparatus spinning before I dropped the object onto it. So this is just bare apparatus spinning, then I dropped the object, which caused this big slowdown. The second level area is when the dropped object and the apparatus are spinning together at a slower speed. And we want to measure the angular velocity before and after this collision. And we're going to use the cursors to do that, like before. But before I talk about how you do that, I want to first describe some sort of glitchy things you may see in your data. So the first one you can actually see here in my data, and that is that I've got some curvature in the collision. That's because when I was dropping my object, I accidentally rubbed the spindle a little bit. So I didn't drop it cleanly onto the spindle, it rubbed. So in a perfect world, the data would look like a level area, then a sudden drop-off, and then another level area, and you wouldn't see this rounding. So my data is a little bit marginal. If you see this much rounding, I actually recommend you retake your data to try and get a cleaner drop where you have less rubbing on the spindle. The other glitchy thing you may see is down here right after the collision, you may see one big spike upward. What causes that? Well, that's because when you dropped the object, the picket disc skidded just a little bit, but just for the first moment. So if you do see a little spike here, that's nothing to worry about. You're just going to avoid it when you take your data. So let's do that now. So as before, we want to use the cursors to get the angular velocity before and after the collision. So you come down here to the white box, and for the initial value, you right-click, say bring to center, grab your cursor, and move it to the level area just before the collision. Try to avoid the rounding if you've got any of that. Same thing for the second one, you right-click, say bring to center, grab your cursor, and move it just after the collision to the level part. So if you've got that little spike at the beginning, avoid that. But otherwise, try and put it right after the collision. And you do want to have it right before and right after the collision as much as possible, because as you can see over here, the apparatus is slowing down a little bit due to friction. So you will get the most accurate data if you can go right before and right after the collision, so that you avoid those friction effects. So as before, the values you want are in the second column here. These are the angular velocities before and after the collision. And once you've got your cursor set like this, you're going to print this graph out and then write on it by hand the angular velocity before and after the collision with uncertainties that you will have to calculate and with units. And once you've got your values, you're going to look up the moment of inertia value for your dropped object that you measured in a previous experiment, and you're going to use that to calculate the angular momentum before and after this collision. And then you'll be able to say whether those two numbers agree within their limits of uncertainty. In other words, you'll be able to say whether angular momentum was conserved in this experiment.